in mind. It's not only colonialism that some tribes are saying they have Hebraic ancestry. There's Kippah Vita. The reason why Congo people are Christian is because Kippah Vita, a young black woman who was initiated as a priestess to the nation. There was two types of priests in the Congo Empire. One was to the individual, one was to the nation. She was initiated as a priestess to the nation. She became a Christian and she started to preach a black Christ, black faith, that the people of the Congo were the chosen people. She was burned at the stake, her bones were ground to a dust, and then her people were sold to Brazil, already believing in a black Jesus. Bless his soul, he was my professor, but hundreds of years before Dr. James Holmes said God is black and Jesus is black, and if God is white, kill God. Kippah Vita, a young black woman of her own, made this decision and was totally obliterated for it. So I just want to be mindful that as we're talking about this, the 400 years doesn't make or break me, because I don't have anything prophetic hinging on that. I was working for my people before the 400 years. Mama can attest to that. I'll be working after. But if this is in the imaginations of the people, we got to be able to take this conversation outside of this room to the average person in a way that's not patronizing. Right. Because the truth is, we were at the helm of most of the major spiritual systems. If we are aboriginal to everywhere, then we must be aboriginal to most of these systems. And sometimes I feel, if even when African people come forward and say certain things are their traditions, it's still a missionary gave you that, a colonialist gave you that. And for me, I am very dedicated to what the ancestors went through. And even in saying we were here before 1619, I know among younger people, my age bracket, some people are taking that information to say there were no slave ships. And for me, I feel the ancestors boil up when you don't say that. When you say that. Because there were people who came. And some of them came as Christians, some of them came as Muslim royalty, some of them came as Ifa. But they came, and I think we need to be mindful of just how we're giving the whole story. Yes, I know for a fact that there were people sailing to America before Columbus. Right. But I also know that many of us came on the ships, and I just want to make sure we're not, especially for younger people who's running with this Aboriginal thing to the point of disrespecting the ancestors. I want to make sure we're clear about that. And it was actually a black rep who put HR 1242 up, so we can have a discussion around what role do our people play when they have places of power. I used to do organizing around political figures, so if we don't trust HR 1242, let's just be mindful that a black man put it up there. So what's our role, not only as spiritual leaders, but as political leaders as well? So I just wanted to lift those things up, because I think sometimes, even in these spaces, we can get into a European hierarchy of this is higher than this is higher than that. But I know people with internalized depression who even practice traditional religions, but they don't like dark-skinned people. I always say, if you want to practice a tradition based on Ifa, but you don't respect how a Yoruba person looks, and you would die if you woke up looking like a Yoruba person, then you want my African spirit, but you don't want me. Even though I'm a Hebrew, I love Africa. I took the Harvard implicit bias test. I have a bias towards darker skin. I think these are some of the things we need to examine, because we can say we're liberating ourselves, and we love the traditions, but we don't love the people connected to the traditions. So for me, whether it's 400 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years, what are we doing to truly respect the root of where we came from? Because what I'm seeing, even with the traditional religions, is that even white people are encroaching on that. And I'm a Hebrew, and I had to tell some white people, back up off of here. You need to calm down. And I told them, I just got in an argument with a white professor at Columbia who had so much to say about the tradition in Brazil, and African Americans didn't keep it. Now, if you're from South Carolina, you know about voodoo. Exactly. Okay, my grandmother used to take trips, and then all the family problems get solved. Now she forgot about the trip. So, I just think whatever tradition you're in, I just have a question for the audience. In looking at these past 400 or 500 years, something happened to us as a people. And so how did we get here? Does your tradition have an answer for how we got here? Because when I read the slave narratives, even confessions from Nigerians whose family owned slaves, I read a confession in the New Yorker, they weren't Christian, they were traditionalists. So we really have to examine how did we get here so we don't stay here for the next whatever 100 years.
Thank you so much.
And just to say, Mama, the answer for me because Benin wouldn't let me in when I went to the country. I was denied. They wouldn't let me in.
To our second question, since we're on the note of liberation, and since you spoke about liberation, I'll let Dr. Cruz take that and start there. If 2019 marks a time for liberation, what exactly should liberation mean or look like to us? Dr. Cruz?
Oh, Dr. Cruz?
Begin by having mics for everybody. It's a difficult question to respond to because it's really broad. And there's so many, I guess liberation for me would be that the overwhelming majority of people of African descent would be working towards liberation. But I'm kind of like, I hate to say it, like a pessimist a little bit. I don't see that happening. During the, I guess I could bring up politics in some sense, during the Obama administration, I saw how behind we were in terms of thinking of liberation. Just the fact that there could be no critique, okay, in many sectors of our community. Just the fact that Obama himself, it was kind of almost sad, because I have a lot of respect for him as an individual, but it was almost sad how he constantly tried to get support and love from white people, and he bent over backwards to do that, and he didn't get it. Such an intelligent man didn't get it that white supremacy doesn't have room for that. So if you have one of the most powerful people in the world when he was president, still bending over, in Spanish we say andando ñangotao, there's a lot of work to be done. So liberation, I think we have to, I try to look at it in small steps, or in small forms. You know, work where you're at. What are you really doing in the sector that you are at to bring liberation of the mind? And you can't have liberation without deeply understanding how ingrained racism is in this society, and that means in the fibers of our own bodies and minds. We are constantly trying to emulate scholarship that comes out of white supremacy, and sometimes, listen to what I have to say first before you make a conclusion. Sometimes we have no choice, but I don't totally mean that. But the truth is that you're forced to think in a certain way if you want to be part of the scholarly world, of the intellectual world. So I don't even like using names, and I could, but I don't like using names of theorists any longer that are not black. Everybody wants to be a post-colonial theorist now. Everybody wants to call me Baba, and everybody Foucault, and everybody. Those people, you can't get away if you have a PhD without studying them. But don't mention them, even when you're using them. That's where I've got to. So liberation for me means looking at little details of how, what I say, what I believe, and how I behave, in order to be able to break away from this cage that we find ourselves in.
All right.
All right.
I think she will be the only wiser person to
So, my name is Mika'il again, and I've never thought about 2019 as being a mark of time for liberation. Say that. In terms of the question, I remember when I got my master's degree in sociology, the first book that I read after graduating was The Death of White Sociology, by this woman named, I think it's Latin. Well, I did that because I knew what I had gone through, and I used to tell myself, after I go through this, I gotta black up. The problem is, you know, even when you think about some of the things that you said, is that if people are not exposed to information and alternative ways of thinking, then they only think based on what they've been exposed to. And so that's what I said we need to use, as I'm thinking, this time as an opportunity to begin to promote, to suggest our own narrative. And that's just as simple as that. And also provide a corrective statement when people take their positions a little too far. For example, as you were saying, you know, the whole Aboriginal discussion should not negate the reality of the shadow slave experience. But I think it's also important for us to develop our own frameworks for analysis. Because, you know, we're all going through these, you know, academia, and they provide you with different ways of looking at things or looking at the world. And often, you know, when we send our children to these schools that are not of our own making, they become alien to themselves because they sense a conflict, but there's no community support or other support, even in the family, who are able to resolve some of those internal contradictions that they might be having. So there's a bigger job for us, no matter where we are, when we begin to interact with people like ourselves, because we know, at least I've learned, that in these institutions there's a manifest agenda or a manifest curriculum and a hidden curriculum. Like, for example, one of the things I asked is that, you know, I went to school for reading, writing, arithmetic, and I didn't quite understand what part of the game was I pledged allegiance to the flag. You know, because you go to school with one intention, but there are other things that are being, you know, not subliminally suggested, but in a very overt way, providing those people that are in these institutions. So I agree with the whole notion that we have to reintroduce ourselves to our cosmological perspectives, because one's cosmological perspective informs how you live. So I'm clear about that, and not having, well, one of the things, you know, I was told by a Muslim scholar, I forget his name is, he's contemporary out in California, he started an institute, but one of the things he was suggesting that we need to revisit black candidates, we need to revisit our own leadership, because we are, as you, for some, being programmed to think a certain way. And again, the same way I talk about people that may get involved, just as involved. Often, the reason for them getting involved in certain types of behavior because they can see no alternative way of being. When they are provided an alternative way of being and an alternative way of thinking, then often, more times than not, they make a different choice. And so it's about exposure. A good number of people, and it's a good thing that a lot of people here have come out, but this place really should be too small for the audience that we need to be addressing. You know what I mean? It should be, how do you say that, the live stream You know, we should be, you know, this message or whatever it is that we're talking about here, it is being live. I know.
I didn't know either.
And that's what I'm saying, you need to let us know what's happening. So we get it.
It's authentic.
But I mean, he was in a bad situation. You know what I mean? A lot of us, when we find ourselves in a situation, the situation in themselves are compromising. And so, if you don't have the community support, if you don't have, you know, the people, if you're not in touch with your people and you're out there all by yourself, you're out there all by yourself.
Yeah.
I experienced that. I went to a high school preparatory school for boys, which is in Lakeville, Connecticut, which was populated by people named Bill Ford. I was one of 7 blacks at the school. I was the only black guy at the school that was there on an academic scholarship. When I came back to Harlem and I ran into my friends, I said, "Hi, guys." And they all laughed at me. But the reason they laughed at me, I didn't quite understand what had happened to me while I was immersed in that environment. When I came home, I was no longer home. When I got to school, I was in no man's land. I didn't belong there either. And so that happens to a lot of us who are exposed to these methods of intellectual so-called development, but in intellectual development, we often lose our souls in the process. Even the term, you know, this psychology and all that kind of stuff, none of that is of us. And so we are examining our mind from a perspective that is not even ours. So of course we're going to have all these kind of problems. So when you think about liberation, in order to be liberated, we have to return to that which is ours, to even begin even kind of conversation about where we go from here.
I think this ties into it. I'm going to go to the third question, and I think this is perfect. What are the physical and spiritual possibilities of returning to Africa? The physical and spiritual possibilities of returning to Africa, in whatever sense that might be. What does Africa have to offer us, and what do we have to offer Africa?
I was going to say, in terms of the issue of liberation, it was going to be brief. My son sent me a video today by Ms. Treya Tingo featuring Peter Panya. And it is Afrobeat reggaeton, right? And so for me, it's Afrobeat, it's reggaeton, it's, you know, it's Spanish speaking, it's Yoruba, it's English speaking. It's a Creole universe. Okay, and liberation for me means taking and reclaiming all that is ours in its entirety, in its variety, in its complexity, and sort of filtering out what is the best, what is the most poetic, what is the most engaging about it, and redefining it, recreating it, so that it becomes something that it has rebirthed itself, it has actually recycled itself. Because again, we're operating in a space, and in that space there are a multiplicity of options, and again, we are free to grab and take what we need and to hold on to that, and to transfer that into some other kind of energy and space. But it's got to be informed by beauty, it's got to be informed by grace, it's got to be informed by a confidence in ourselves that we are grounded, and that, again, there's no limit to our imaginations.